What if I told you that a tiny island, smaller than New York City, plays one of the most powerful roles in global trade? It doesn't have a massive army. It doesn't produce vast natural resources. And yet, major global economies depend on it every single day. Today on Watch and Know, we journey into the fascinating story of a little-known giant. A small island that quietly holds the keys to the world's trade routes. This is not fiction. It's geography, politics, history, and economics, all tied into one powerful truth. So sit back and prepare to discover why this tiny speck on the map controls a massive chunk of the world's future. You look at a world map, and your eyes land on the narrow waterway between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. Sitting right there, almost like a footnote, is the island nation of Singapore. Singapore covers just over 700 square kilometers. But here's the twist. This tiny island is one of the busiest shipping hubs in the world. Its port handles more than 37 million TEUs of containers every year. That's more than major countries with far more coastline and land. Why does it matter? Because Singapore sits at the crossroads of one of the most important maritime trade routes on Earth. Every ship traveling between Europe and East Asia must pass through the Strait of Malacca, and Singapore is the gatekeeper. Singapore is located on the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula. To its west is the Indian Ocean. To its east, the Pacific. That means any trade between China, Japan, Korea, and Europe or the Middle East must pass this way. Imagine this. Over 40% of global trade passes through the narrow 1.7-mile wide Strait of Malacca. That's trillions of dollars in goods, from crude oil and gas to electronics, food, and textiles. And who's sitting right there, controlling access, infrastructure, and logistics? Singapore. It didn't just happen by accident. Singapore saw the opportunity, and it built an empire of shipping lanes, free ports, and refueling stations. The island became the ultimate pit stop in the global economy. It wasn't always this way. Singapore started as a humble fishing village. Colonized by the British in 1819, it was chosen for one simple reason: location. The British understood what many overlook today. Whoever controls the Strait of Malacca controls trade. When Singapore gained independence in 1965, many doubted its survival. It had no natural resources, a small population, and was surrounded by larger, skeptical neighbors. But under the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore made a bet. Trade would be its weapon, and shipping would be its lifeline. It poured investment into its port, made it corruption-free, business-friendly, and lightning-fast. It worked. Today, the Port of Singapore operates 24/7, moving millions of containers through high-tech systems and AI-enhanced cranes. It's not just a port, it's a hyper-efficient machine. From oil tankers to cargo ships, vessels from over 120 countries dock here every year. Some just refuel, others offload goods. Some switch containers to different vessels altogether. Singapore became the hub of a concept called transshipment, where goods are moved from one ship to another. That allowed even landlocked countries to access global trade by routing through Singapore. In the 2000s and 20s, as global supply chains tightened due to the pandemic and geopolitical conflict, Singapore's importance only grew. When ships were stuck in other ports, Singapore kept moving. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Singapore didn't stop at shipping. It became a financial, tech, and legal hub too. Why does that matter for trade? Because where money flows, so does control. Singapore hosts major banks, trading firms, and legal arbitration centers. If a shipping company gets into a legal dispute, chances are it's handled in Singapore. This tiny island writes the fine print of trade deals, hosts negotiations, and monitors commodities from oil to palm oil to gold. It even leads in green shipping innovations, working on carbon-neutral ports and AI-managed logistics. But what happens if Singapore goes offline? What if war or climate change impacts the Strait of Malacca? The consequences would be immediate and global. Prices would rise, goods would delay, oil could spike, economies could reel. That's why global powers like China, the US, and even India are keeping a close eye on this tiny island. It's not just about who owns land anymore. It's about who controls movement. Singapore knows this. That's why it invests in cyber defense, alternative routes, and diplomatic neutrality. It plays the balancing act of being everyone's friend, but no one's pawn. So the next time you hear about a package arriving late, or a spike in gas prices, or even a global trade war, remember this tiny island. Singapore may not look like a global titan on the map, but its influence echoes in ports, markets, and factories across every continent.